Hello, friends, and welcome to the Reclamation Podcast. I'm your host, Megan Colleen Johnson, and I'm here to guide us in raw conversations about thriving in life and work, so that together we can step into personal agency and stop letting life happen to us. We'll cover topics like health, boundaries, communication, finances, and worthiness. That badass business you've been dreaming of, it's not so far off. The desire to wake up feeling fully alive, it's right around the corner. All right. Well, welcome to the podcast, Taylor.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you. And we haven't talked in a couple of years, really. So I'm really excited to get to know where you've headed in the past couple of years. I know I get your email newsletters for Pen and Pillar, and I love everything that you make. So I'm so excited.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it so much. So as a brief introduction for everyone, this is Taylor Mahlke. Is that how you say it?
Mahlke, yeah.
Mahlke. Okay. Taylor Mahlke. And you're the owner and founder of Pen and Pillar, which is an e-commerce paper goods store. I'd love to, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I just run it with my husband, and we just have a good time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love watching your Instagram feed as well and just kind of seeing how that has evolved. Because I think a couple of years ago when we first connected, it was primarily you working on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, he didn't hop on board until June of last year, the end of June, actually. So It hasn't quite been a year yet.
Awesome. And is that basically what he does full time now as well?
Yeah, so he works most days with me, and then he's also a worship leader at our church. So he pulls a day and a half at church as well. So, but mostly here with me, yeah.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So I was kind of thinking through how we met, and I honestly, I know we worked on brand strategy a couple of years ago together, and some design and templates and things. But I couldn't really remember how we actually connected. Did you find me through Instagram, or do you remember how we got connected?
It's so funny because I actually don't. I really want to say it was somewhere online. I was Googling for those kind of services, and I think you may have popped up, and I also may have found you on Instagram. It's one of those two, though.
Yeah. It was so funny because usually I feel like I have a distinct memory of oh, this is how I connected with someone, whether it's Instagram or through email or something, but I couldn't really remember it with you.
Yeah.
But I remember working on your brand strategy and such. It was so fun, because you already had such a great sense for your brand. And so it was just really fun to work on that with you.
Oh yeah, we had a great time. And you brought so much clarity to all of my questions.
Well, thank you. It was fun. I love to see how you've really brought it. And recently I noticed you released fabrics, which is so cool to have your art printed on fabric. I love that.
Yeah, thank you. We partnered with Minted to design a line of fabrics that are carried through our personal store there on Minted. So yeah, it's really cool to see it in I guess our cards and stuff, they are physical form, but a useful home product is pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that so much. So cool. So we can go ahead and dive into some of your story. I know we've kind of been going back and forth via email, but really why I started this podcast is to kind of help bring to light the real stories behind small business owners so we can learn to thrive together in our lives and work. Often our origin stories, they're kept pretty simple, straightforward. We kind of put to side the difficult moments, and we just see the highlights kind of on Instagram. You see the highlights, I know I've seen the launch of your new fabric line, and I've seen that your husband is more present in your business. But I know there's so much more behind that. And so with this podcast, I'm meeting with small business owners and having conversations so we can learn from each other's stories, and we can kind of be part of elevating one another and showing each other that anything is possible. So I'd love if you're willing to share kind of your journey to Pen and Pillar, kind of maybe some of your history, and if you're willing to share some of the difficult moments and the really good moments, because those are always important too.
Oh yeah, I love that question because I joke a lot that no one is more unqualified for this job than I am. So yeah, I really like that question. So I was living in Minneapolis with my husband, Justin. I'm from North Carolina here, but he's from Minnesota. And after we got married, we moved to Minneapolis together, and we were struggling like most newlyweds financially. It was, I don't have a degree. I never graduated college. And Justin at the time was working in a treatment center for youth who it was like the step in between, like basically like normal life and juvenile detention. So it was a treatment center. He went in there and he helped with their education. And so I was working so hard to try to find just like any kind of job that would pay the bills. And I did eventually find a job at an art studio in Minneapolis. I was working with elementary students. It was like an after school art intensive program.
Oh, cool.
It was really neat and I really loved it. The staff was like so great. It was really neat to work with kids again because I used to teach art. And so it was really great to be able to do that again. But because it was only an after school program, the hours were very limited. And so, financially, it was still pretty tough on us. And we had this car that was, it had over 200,000 miles on it. And so it was
wow.
I know it was breaking down a lot and having a lot of just like mechanical issues. And so really my whole paycheck was just going to this car. And so one day Justin was like, what if you just sold the car and you started doing your own thing? And I was like, well, I don't even know what that would be. Like, I've always loved art, but I never pursued any kind of career in it, never really like, went for it. And so I was like, well, I'd kind of need to look into like what that would even look like for us.
Well, it kind of feels crazy when you first start something like that. Like, I mean, I know for me, it was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to run my own business. And I mean, people are supportive, but it's also like, you're what? Like, okay, cool. Like, good luck.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, when you're in college and you dream about these things, it feels like so attainable. And to be honest, it really is attainable. But when you sit down, it feels like this massive list of like all these things that you don't know.
Yeah.
So I was like, I just need a little bit to kind of like look into what I would do with art. Obviously, we were going down the road of some kind of like independent freelance type of thing. And so, I kind of landed on just for basically like startup purposes and what kind of fit my current abilities was I did a lot of logos, but most of my work was designing tattoos for people.
Oh, and that's fun.
It was really fun. I actually even dabbled in being like a tattoo artist for a little while, but that never panned out. So maybe one day.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So I was just kind of, here and there, I do like maybe some hand lettering for like wedding signs or things like that. But that was a lot less frequent. But yeah, it was just kind of picking up whatever custom work would come my way. And it wasn't super sustainable, but it was a really good start for me. And one day I came to Justin, I was like, you know what, I just really feel like I need like an ongoing product to sell, like something that will just kind of keep the sales coming in.
Yeah.
And when I said that, I kind of unknowingly started our business. So what happened was my mom had given me this really cool, like weekly notepad from Anthropology, and I used it all the time. And it was about to run out. And so I looked at the back, like to see who made it, like where can I order it? Because I couldn't afford Anthropology. And I was like,
I get that.
Yeah. And I saw that it was Rifle Paper Company. We all know Rifle Paper Company, right? But at the time I was like, who is this? So I looked them up and I was like, they had a website, and I was like very confused because it's like, okay, they have a website, but I got this at Anthropology. Like, how is this happening? And so I kind of stumbled into the world of paper goods and wholesale, and I started finding all of these other well-known brands, people like Our Heyday, One Canoe 2. And I was like, wow, this is like a whole like culture of people who are just like painting on cards. This is so awesome.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like, yeah, I want to do paper. It was a low startup cost, and it gave me a lot of creative control. I liked the ability to be able to kind of create my own collection. That sounded really fun. And so I just really dove into it. At the time I wasn't making enough money to really like pay us or to even kind of, sustain any kind of product-based business. I was doing more custom work then. So to account for new overhead, I was like, I think I can't afford to outsource. I think I need to like print all of my own stuff. So we were running this business on our leftover money, which was, to be honest, anywhere between about $50 to $75 a month.
Wow.
And so it was very tight. And so we couldn't even afford a printer. So we threw that on a credit card, a little $200 printer. And I started printing all of our cards. I would design them, print them. And then after I started printing cards, I was like, well, this is fun. So I started printing art pads and I was like, well, that's fun too. And so I started printing and like padding our own notepads. It was crazy.
Wow.
It was so ridiculous.
That is amazing.
Telling this story, it's like, I can't even believe that I thought that was a good idea. but it's how I got started.
Yeah.
And I launched into wholesale immediately. I liked the idea of working business to business. And so there were some local Minneapolis businesses I reached out to probably about 2 or 3 months into opening up shop. And I was like, okay, you guys are so cool and my product's cool and we would be cool together. I mean, my emails were ridiculous at the time. And thankfully one of them was like, yeah, that sounds good. So I got my first wholesale order and I was like, wow, I love this. This is the way I want to go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then it just kind of blossomed from there. About 8 to 10 months after I started in Minnesota, we moved to North Carolina, and I hopped on Etsy wholesale and I was accepted the same day. And I was so excited. And I was like, okay, now that I'm on Etsy wholesale, I really need to like outsource my printing. I'm tired of doing all my printing. I can't do it anymore. Yeah. So I found a local printer in our town. And Etsy wholesale just really took off for us. I mean, it was pretty much immediate success there. Yeah, we were really fortunate to find that platform. They're now closed, but we were on there for about a year, about almost 2 years, I think, actually, and it was phenomenal. So that's kind of what jump-started everything.
That's so cool. That's like such a great origin story. I feel like you really, it was really just like you bootstrapped it and like figured it out as you went.
We really did.
I also love how really like intuitive you were with the business structure, like your business model. Something that I'm talking about with another podcast episode is like the importance of intuition in business and how like often our intuition is kind of pushed to the side in business, or like we're told to put our intuition to the side. But even just that idea of like, you looked at the back of the rifle paper company and then you just kind of learned how they did it and the wholesale felt right. So you just went for it and you just like it felt like I mean, I'm sure along the way it didn't feel as smooth, but it just sounds like a really intuitive journey that you just learned to trust yourself and trust what the next step was, which I really love that. It sounds so cool.
Well, I think some of it is like ignorance in a sense, because it's like, I didn't know any other way. I had no business training. I had no knowledge. And so it's just kind of like, I'm soaking in all of these stories of how these other businesses got started, because it's kind of like, I don't even know where to start. And so, they're talking about saying yes to every opportunity, just going for it. And it's like, well, I guess that's what I have to do.
Yeah. Yeah. But like, that's, I think what's the most impressive part about it too, is like, because you didn't have the business knowledge, like you really stepped into the role. Like, it sounds like even just very immediately, like, you're like, all right, I'm going to print stuff. I'm going to, get this out there. And like, I don't know, that's just, it's really, really cool to hear. Cause I feel like sometimes it takes a long time to kind of figure out those steps. And I love that you were able to trust yourself enough to, just be like, okay, yes, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to take this next step, which is, I just love that. Very, very cool.
Thank you. It was definitely like a blessing in disguise for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was very scary at the time too. Like you were talking about how money was so tight. That's always scary when you're diving into those things too.
Oh, it was. And to be honest, that was definitely more of an uphill battle than we were prepared for. I kind of, when you start researching things about a particular industry, at least in my experience, all of the top forerunners are kind of like at the top of all the Google searches and on the podcasts and the interviews and things like that. And so a lot of them sound like overnight successes. And so I just kind of thought it would click, like it would just happen. And, we didn't cut a profit until I think about a little over 2 years in. And so that was pretty unexpected. But once we saw the potential, we were like, no, we'll keep living, well below our means and just keep plugging away because we believe in what this could be.
Yeah. Yeah. The passion is like kind of what carried you through.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's always, I feel like a misconception in small business is that, there is like overnight success. And we see so many ads on Instagram and Facebook now of like, reach 6 figures in 2 weeks or whatever it is. And the reality of small business is like, it takes time, it takes grit, it takes passion. And we just like, I don't know, I think social media messes with our minds a little bit when it comes to that.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think one thing too is businesses really ebb and flow. Like for us, we went through a stretch of like really serious growth. And then when Etsy wholesale closed down, that really hurt us. And we're just now kind of getting back in our groove and finding, okay, so now we have to restructure the way we do wholesale. We have to, be more intentional about outreaches, and let's show up at trade shows, and let's start sending more mailers, all these strategies that we didn't use before. You got to recalibrate. And it's like, just because you're doing well now, you have to stay on top of things. And there will be times where, it is up and down. And just because you're doing well now doesn't mean you'll be doing well forever. So you have to commit to staying on top of your business and constantly be like, kind of taking stock of like what's working and what's not and where can we grow.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Becoming that like actual business owner and like taking that role seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's cool. Kind of moving on into the next topic. I know during our emails, we kind of discussed primary topics as like sharing what it's like to make art as your work. I know a lot of artists out there struggle with, especially in the service space where it's like, you're trading your time for artwork. That can be really, really difficult. I know for you, it's a little bit different because it's not service based. You're e-commerce and wholesale. But I would love if we can like dive into that a little bit and kind of what that journey has been like for you. Like if you've experienced burnout and things like that with creating art regularly.
Oh yeah. Gosh, yes.
I know that wasn't like really a specific question. I don't know if there's anything initially that you think about when I talk about that, but
yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is, I think the hardest thing for me being an artist who runs a business was learning to create on a schedule, on demand.
Yeah. Yeah.
For our business as a product-based business, it's very important that we be releasing new collections 3 to 4 times a year. 4 is really the optimal goal. And so it takes me I like to give myself about 2 months of time to create a new collection. Some of that does include uploading all the files and creating them for print and, making all the product photos and things like that. But, that means that I'm creating almost around 8 months of the year. And so it's a lot of work, but when I sit down to create a collection, I don't just think like, what would I like? What is so pretty? You have to be really strategic about, our thank you cards are kind of struggling a little bit. We need to add some more there. Birthday cards are a big seller, but our collection, these 2 aren't doing well. Let's make this and replace it with this. And succulents are really hot right now. Emerald's really hot right now. All of these things we have to keep in mind. It's not always like what I'm feeling, what I'm into. Even sometimes what inspires me is not what's going to sell. So being disciplined that way is definitely something that I've had to learn to grow into.
For sure. Yeah. I know as a like a doing primarily branding and design, as well as marketing, but like with that design aspect, there have been so many moments where I'm like cranking out design, and it can be a lot to constantly be creating, especially when it's not something that's necessarily inspiring to me, but it's primarily for my audience. So it's different. But it's still great though, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, I do still take on custom jobs here and there. And I started out custom. And so I can definitely relate to that. And it is a little bit of a grind to work through some of the projects where like, well, I'm not really feeling this, but I really do love this client, So yeah.
That's cool. So I'm curious, so you talked a little bit about, you sometimes do some custom work. So was there a time specifically when you used to trade kind of art for money in that more service-based model? It was like a little bit at the beginning, right?
Yeah, I did. I did logos and tattoo designs. It wasn't super long. I only did that. I'm trying to think back now. I think it was for about 6 months, and I just took on kind of a range of things because I just kind of announced like, hey, I've got this business on Facebook and Instagram. And so it was basically like a lot of my friends and their friends that were like, hey, could you do this? Could you hand letter this? Could you do this tattoo? Could you do, my friend's starting a business. Could you do her logo? So it was a real range of things. I was just kind of trying to earn a little money at the time. It was not very strategic.
But it's like you said, though, you kind of shifted pretty quickly to the product model, which I think is amazing. Again, that kind of speaks to just like saying yes and like taking the next step. Because I feel like a lot of times people get stuck in that service-based model for a really long time when there's a lot of freedom when it comes to just like, okay, well, what are the different business models out there that might allow me a little more wiggle room and a little bit less ebb and flow, so things are a little bit more steady. So that's really cool. So like, can you talk a little bit more about what that process was in discovering kind of that product-based business model?
Yeah. So I learned pretty early on that I didn't like custom work. And the reason for that was because I had very, very little training in art. And so the art that I did was just, I did a lot of realistic like sketching. Like I would find pictures in like National Geographic and of people whose expressions just like got me. And I was like, I just draw this. Like, I just need to somehow like get this on paper. And so I would just do a lot of sketching like that. But where I learned that I love tattoos was I made this massive like lion for my husband for his birthday, the first year we were married. And I was like, oh, okay, I like drawing tattoos. This is fun. And so nothing was ever real like strategic. And so when people were coming to me with their ideas, when they just see an artist and they're like, oh, I wanted, something in my home, and they have this idea, I was like, I don't know that I can do this. Like, I have no training. I just kind of do whatever I like, whatever speaks to me. And so I really didn't feel equipped enough. I don't feel like I had the training to take on a lot of the work that I think would have made it sustainable. Looking back, had I maybe like recalibrated and said, I'll start with custom wedding stationery or things like that, I think this might have turned out a little bit differently, because I actually find myself now kind of wanting to go back and do a little bit of custom work here and there. Like now that I know more and have more of like my own style, like I think it'd be fun to do weddings. I think it might be fun to do some like signs for people at their wedding and things like that. So
for sure.
It was really just like a lack of kind of confidence, but also education in the beginning, just being asked to do things that I was like, this kind of isn't really in my wheelhouse. I think I just need to stick with what I know. And so that's kind of why I started doing products.
Oh, that's cool. That's like, kind of like what we were talking at the beginning is just like, how it's so interesting how things can kind of go one way and then they could have gone another way, or, you try something and it doesn't work. And I just love hearing about that journey though. Like you just felt unconfident about one thing, but then it ultimately resulted in this, business that may have never come about, but it's like like you were saying, it's such a blessing. And now you and your husband get to be a part of it, which is amazing, just because of this like journey of, trying something and there's a dead end and then there's the next thing that, I just love that. It's so great.
Oh yeah. And that's why I love talking about our story, is because I really hope that, whoever's listening to this, that they realize that it literally just takes like hard work and like wanting it. It really does. I love watching Shark Tank because Mark Cuban, I feel like, always tells people that. And I'm just like in the background, like, yes, I'm in that. It's so true.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I love Shark Tank.
It's the best. I love it.
It's so good.
It is. Yeah.
So great. Yeah, I love that though, because I think sometimes we think that small business is unattainable, or we feel overwhelmed, or, like there's a lot of people that feel very overwhelmed by the idea of small business, especially because social media is such a huge market now. It's like, well, how would I market my stuff? Because there's so many other voices out there. Like, is it worth it? Like, but the reality is really like, it definitely takes time and it takes hard work, but there are so many pieces to it that are wonderful as well. I love that kind of concept of just, you can do it. It just takes time and work.
Oh yeah, 100%. And also like reining in your emotions about it a little bit. For me as an artist, it's when my post doesn't get as many likes as I thought it would, or when the new product that I launched doesn't do as well as I hoped. It's hard to not be like, oh, they think I'm a bad artist. Oh, my style isn't good enough. I have to work on, like all these kinds of things. And it's like, no, you gotta, like, I'm learning to step back from the emotion a little bit and just take like a hard look at it and just be like, what's really going right and wrong here? Like where can I recalibrate? Where do I need to adjust and not play the comparison game?
Yeah. In the book, You Are a Dream by Guillermo Wolf, he kind of goes by Prof G. He talks about, it's kind of basically the whole book is just about the creative process and like how to work through the creative process. And he shares about that concept in the idea of like, being a creative in business requires resilience, but it also requires the ability to pivot. So you're resilient in what you're doing, but you also have to like kind of take that step back and like feel your feelings, but also like just recognize that it's just time to pivot, like evaluate it, do something new, and just kind of continue on that process of growing and allowing each release, each launch, each time you post, allow that to be a learning experience for the next time, so you can continue sharing your story and sharing your products with others. And it's just a learning experience. Like life really, it's all a learning experience, which it's a little bit refreshing to think of it that way. It's no longer a failure. It's just another step.
Oh yeah. I love that. It is, it's so refreshing to hear that from another creative too. Like, it's not talked a whole lot in our industry about, when your design fails, it's obviously you discontinue that product or whatever, but you have some of that emotion attached to it. Like,
sure.
I have a couple of cards that when I made them, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like my masterpiece. I love these. And then we haven't sold a single one. It's going to happen. What resonates with me doesn't always resonate with someone else. And, as I think he's right. You do need to be able to take a step back and pivot, because something really beautiful happens when I stop thinking about just myself and I start thinking about, well, what does my community want? Like when I'm also creating and for other people and they're loving what I'm doing, even if I'm like, oh, this isn't like my favorite thing, but everyone's responding well to it. It's like, oh, this is like, I'm hearing other people's inspiration too. And that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I love hearing you talk about it too, because it's also, I don't know, I feel like you come from such a genuine place. It's not necessarily you're not necessarily thinking of it as just like a marketing scheme. It's like a genuine, like, oh, this is what people are resonating with, and I can learn from that, and I can create something different to continue resonating with them. And I think that in like marketing right now, like in this kind of day that we're in, authenticity is such a big piece of it. So when we can think of marketing like from, how can I serve these people? Like, what is inspiring to them? How is this affecting them? It shifts that whole like kind of cold marketing piece, like making noise, just trying to make the sale, it just shifts that to a much lighter and like more positive perspective.
Yeah. And, I love it when people are honest with me and when they do talk back. Like, so I think it was about a month and a half ago, we put up a very honest survey where we were like, we really wanted people to answer these questions. And so we incentivized it with a 50% off discount code. And so we actually got we got quite a few responses, and it was so interesting to hear what people wanted from us and why they purchased from us. Mm-hmm. And so it was just so enlightening because, we really wanted to get to know our customer better. And so some of the questions were like, I'm trying to remember some of them now. It was fairly long. That's why we offered a 50% off code. It was like, they were all multiple choice. It was like, what's the reason you purchased from us? The options were price, ethics of the business, because they feel like they connect with us, like through social media or something. And then the usefulness of the product. And it blew my mind that I think our total was like 90% of our customers are millennials, but price was the lowest reason that they purchased from us. Like they care about the quality and the usefulness and the ethics of the company. Like to me, that speaks volumes. And so it's like, okay, so that kind of helped us take a new, fresh look when we go to start a new collection. Like, our people care about X, X, and X. Like, how do we do that?
I love that so much. Like, just getting to know your audience and then hearing that from them. Wow. I love that so much. Very cool.
Thanks.
So let's go ahead and, I feel like I could talk about this topic for a really long time, but let's go ahead and pivot.
Sure.
So do you ever find it difficult? So we've kind of talked a little bit about passion and how, passion is a huge part of doing this work, and being a small business owner, you really have to have that drive to continue on. But do you have any structures in place to help balance that so you don't get burnt out?
Oh my goodness. So I'm really bad at this, but I'm really trying to work on it. I don't know if you're familiar with the Enneagram.
Yeah.
So I'm a 1, which means that, like, everything that I do is like very purposeful, and it has to have like ethics and a reason behind it. And so I just kind of struggle with this, like, in general, like my whole life. So burnout is very real for me. My problem is I do not always recognize my burnout because I think that passion is so important that when I do get burned out, I don't equate it. I don't equate the two. And so I'm really trying to get better about, being more self-aware. And what I've realized about myself is my passion is both, one of my greatest strengths, but also one of my flaws. And the reason for that is because, the driving force behind our brand is to build this business so that we can really empower our local community of refugees while also giving back to like the big picture. And so when I think about what I want this to be, when I picture who I want to work with and who I want to empower, I find myself, when I get burned out, thinking that I have too much of a role in that, instead of being like, I am one of the things that will help them in life. I'm one of the people that will empower them. And so I really just have to make myself smaller and kind of keep my pride in check. Like, I don't fix things. I don't solve this math problem that I want to. I'm just a part of the solution. And so that helps a lot, is just kind of like just taking a step back and being like, this doesn't all weigh on you. It's a group effort.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I know, like, with the Enneagram too, it's such an interesting way to start evaluating and looking at yourself and recognizing different things about yourself. And like, I know with ones, it tends to be like kind of like a perfectionist type thing.
Oh yeah.
So that's interesting too. Like, you kind of have to just remind yourself, like, oh yeah, like, got to take a step back. Like, I can't make everything perfect. But it's kind of the collective, all of us putting in our piece of the puzzle to kind of help bring things back together.
Exactly. It really is like just calming down that perfectionist mindset and just going back to like, why are you doing this? And being realistic about what can I actually do, but also reminding myself that doing too much just makes me incapable. You know what I mean? Like, who am I really serving then? So it is, and also just reminding myself to still find joy in my work and still enjoy, creating and even the business aspect of it, investing in all of that as well. Just in general, calming down.
For sure. I love that. So kind of the next question, I guess that's kind of the same question here. So do you have any steps that you've learned that the audience might be able to kind of pull from as they run their businesses? So you kind of talked more about how for you remind yourself that, you gotta have to take a step back a little bit. Do you have any tips or tricks for other people, whether it's like they're in the e-commerce, wholesale, product-based art as work type of thing as they're kind of running their businesses?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is to be really honest with yourself about the health of your business. So I like to take a step back. I do this weekly, but I think each business is different. But for me, I just kind of take a step back. I look at my numbers for the week. I evaluate my productivity. In fact, I made this sheet that Justin and I, we have a meeting together every Friday, just where we talk to each other. What were your goals this week? How was your productivity? Did you meet your goals? And going forward next week, what do you want to focus on? And then we just kind of talk about the general health, like in general, over the next 6 months or so, what we're working towards. Do we feel like we're doing well in that? Do we feel like we're attaining some of those things? And, it's really not all about numbers. Numbers are super important for your business. But it's also just like our general productivity and what am I working on? And so just being really honest with myself about, I didn't do super good at getting all of my outreach done this week, for example, or something. And I know that that's very important. So next week I'm going to double up on that and this can fall back. So just what are your very specific goals? What do you have in mind? And then what are you going to do to meet that? And then evaluating, how's it going? Like, how's the business doing? Where can I grow? Where can I, what do I need to spend money educating myself on? What could I outsource, and just being, you're not going to be everything that your business needs. And unfortunately, when you start out, you kind of have to be, and that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
But, as you grow, where can you educate yourself and where can you, have someone else pour into it and just be real honest with yourself about that.
Yeah, I really love that you guys actually meet every Friday to kind of talk through things and check in. I feel like as small business owners often, especially if we're like small or if it's just like a husband and wife or, you and like one other person or, just one person, I feel like we forget to do those things. And whether you're, a team of 50 people or one person, like taking that time to check in is so important. And I love that you guys do that. I know I struggle to do that with myself, like just check in with where I'm at, how the business is doing, like making that time can be difficult. So it's really inspiring. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it really doesn't take much time. I think, every once in a while it will lead us to have some more intense conversations, but obviously those were needed. And so, most meetings take about 20 minutes or so. So we do it first thing Friday morning and then we are clear on the next week about what we're working on. Because we do work.
I love that.
We do work fairly independently. Like I'm still technically the owner of the business, but I handle more of the creative side and Justin does a lot of the inventory shipping, wholesale management, things like that. And so our paths don't cross like a whole lot. And so it is nice to just check in with each other.
Yeah, for sure. That's really cool. That makes me like want to talk to my husband. Like my husband and I run separate businesses. So like I do my business and he does motion design animation.
Oh, cool.
So we do separate things, but it almost makes me want to like just do like a Friday meeting or something where we both check in with each other about each other's businesses. Cause I feel like that could just be a good ritual. Just has me thinking, but
yeah. And you could even learn from each other. And it's even like a little bit of accountability, like just asking about how you were productivity and goals wise and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that so much. So another aspect of your business that you've touched on just a little bit, but you've integrated this idea that we believe paper goods can change the world. Can you speak to that and kind of speak to the outreach that you do as a company?
Absolutely. So the term "we believe paper goods can change the world" probably sounds like really extreme, and I don't know, maybe it is, but I can tell you it's certainly changing our world, and it's certainly changing it's certainly changing High Point as well. So, a little bit of background, I guess. Justin, well, I actually worked with refugees as a child. My parents worked with this. I think it was like 3 or 4 at the time, young men from Sudan. I think they were kind of coined with the term lost boys a long time ago. And so they were a group of young men from Sudan who had escaped some really terrible persecution from their government. Mm-hmm. And so when they got here, they just needed some people to kind of show them the ropes of American culture. We would go hang out with them and we would teach them refrigeration. We took them to get deodorant and to the grocery store and taught them to drive using my dad as a superintendent of a golf course. So we took them out and we practiced on golf carts first. And then we got them in cars and, all of these things. It was just so fun to me as a child to meet someone from another culture and have these friends. And they taught me some Swahili words and it was just so much fun. I just loved it. And so
awesome.
It was really, really cool. And so I grew up and I think that kind of instilled in me a little bit this love for learning about how other people live in other cultures. It's so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And so when I actually dropped out of college to move to the Middle East and I started teaching art there, and that's where I met Justin. He was teaching across the hall from me. He was teaching a bunch of different classes, but we took a group of students from that school to work with Palestinian refugees in the town that we were living at. And that it was a step up from my experience as a kid because I saw them in their element. This was a certain part of the town where Palestinians had moved in, but it was a refugee camp that just kind of got built up over time to be this section of the town, but it was still very poorly managed and things like that. And so to see refugees in their element was extremely eye-opening for me, and just kind of I can't imagine working for and with anyone else. It was just that transformative. And so Justin and I moved back and we got married, and our original plan was actually to go back overseas, but the business happened. And so, and so what ended up happening was, when we started this business, we were like, no, we know that we want to work with refugees and we know that somehow we want this business to empower them. And we didn't know what that meant. We just knew that. And so as it went on, it became very, very clear how this could happen. And so, really, really what we do now is the way that we change the world is twofold. And so one is through the way that, we're very vocal about, we give 10% to our local chapter of World Relief. And that's really cool for 2 reasons. First of all, because they've lost a lot of funding over the last couple years. They used to be more federally funded and a lot of that has gone away. And so we are able to kind of help sustain them. Private donors are extra important. And so also it's just important for people to know where their money goes when they purchase from us. If that's not a cause you want to support, then we're not your brand. But then also, it's really cool because it's been able to connect us with refugees in the community. And so High Point is actually, our town is 10% of its population is refugee, which means that there's over 10,000 refugees here just in our city limits, which is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
And so, what we do kind of behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know is we really want our business to serve as kind of a bridge between the refugee community and the long lifetime people that have grown up here, just High Point people. And so, because what happened was when we learned that statistic, we were shocked and we were like, it's also really sad that we're shocked. And then, we started talking to some of our friends and they were like, yeah, I didn't know that either. And we were like, okay, this is a problem. Like it should not, these lines should be a lot more blurred. Like it should not be this surprising who our neighbors are. And so, we've been very fortunate. I grew up in this town. And so we have a lot of people invested in our business. A lot of people really care about our success and how we're doing. And so it's an easy bridge. And I'm really excited to share that we just signed on our first refugee artisan. So we're actually going to start licensing her artwork. And so you'll start seeing some of that on our cards and notepads and art prints and stuff.
I love that.
I'm so excited. And our goal is to expand that, the licensing line, and then also start adding on new products. And so that's an easy way to bridge the community, because now instead of thinking about refugees as this like, kind of generalized group of people, they can start to be like, oh no, it's so-and-so who makes these like really cool cards.
Yeah.
It puts a face and an identity with someone that used to be just a generalization. And that's what we're really passionate about, is like, how do we get our community connected with each other? Like, how do we bridge that gap?
Kind of breaking down the stereotypes of the stigmas that we have around different things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I love that so much. I didn't know that, like that last part. So that's really cool to hear. That's really exciting too.
Yeah. She's working on her artwork now. We're hoping to have it, by May, but if not, it will definitely be this year. So we're, it's a new process. We're working on all the kinks, but it's so much fun. And it's just been really, really cool.
Yeah. That's amazing. I'm so excited for that.
Me too.
Very cool. So I have a couple more questions before we wrap up, but one of the ones on here that I think would be really cool to hear is who are some of your favorite role models or mindset kind of expanders when it comes to small business?
Yeah. So I'm a part of this group. It's called the Trade Show Bootcamp Alum Group. It's run by Katie Hunt. And so basically what it is it's a community of primarily other paper goods and stationery business owners. And she does a training where she takes you through a lot of wholesale strategies and terms and policies and stuff, and then also teaches you how to go to a trade show. And then after that, you get plugged into all the past groups of people that have gone through this training in a Facebook group. And it's really a wide range of people. Like some people are, kind of on par with me business-wise. Some people are just starting out, and some people are well-known names that you would be like, oh, wow, I've heard of them. And so we all just get in this group and we collaborate, and the more seasoned veterans speak into us and give us advice, and we can just reach out to each other. And that has been so informative. That group has really been so vital to me. Anytime I have a question, anytime I'm confused or like, how does this work? I just run to that group and they're full of advice and encouragement. And, they really have like helped me grow a lot just as a business owner, but also within my industry, which has been really cool too.
That is so cool. I feel like we always need mentors in our lives and just different people to kind of be on the journey with us. So that's amazing that there's like a group specific to your like niche in the market. That's amazing. I love that.
Oh yeah. It's so wonderful. I'm so thankful for it.
So cool. So let's see here. Really, I think that you've kind of answered all of my questions here. So we can kind of just wrap up. You mentioned that one of your new releases then is going to be the new artisan thing that you're working on. So if you want to share just kind of like a little bit more about that, and then where we can find you online. I know I want to go and check out the new release as soon as it comes out because it sounds so cool. But yeah, how can we find you online, and like, what are some new things that you're coming out with that we can keep an eye out for?
Yeah. So, a little bit more about the artisan release. So, we are partnering. So far, we have one artisan signed on. Our goal is to get a few more by the end of the year. And then hopefully by next year, start having some artisans create products outside of just paper goods. So cool. We can just have more of like a lifestyle branded kind of thing. And so, yeah, I'm so excited for it. You can find us online at penandpillar.com. It's PEN, the word and, PILLAR.com. Also on Instagram at penandpillar. And thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate talking to you. It was so much fun.
Yeah, for sure. I really honestly, when I'm like re-looking through my questions, I feel like I could ask you so many more, but I know our time, we've already gone over a little bit but I just I love chatting with you. And I remember when we were doing our brand strategy, I really appreciate what you have to bring to the table and just your ideas. So I really appreciate you joining me. I appreciate your time a lot and your thoughts. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Reclamation Podcast. I hope it served you on your own reclamation journey, and know that I'm rooting for you all the way. If you want to learn more about the show guests, head to the website, thereclamationpodcast.com. And if you found value in the show, 5 stars is always appreciated. Good things are coming for you. Bye for now.